You're listening to the My Hair Ain't Nappy podcast, where I'll be giving valuable insight and thought provoking perspectives about the connections between our hair and how we live our daily lives. I know that many of you have heard people talking about Jerry curls and pressing curls, high top fades and sporting waves, the best products for your hair, and so much more. But what you haven't heard is how our hair can be a full reflection of what's going on in our hearts, what's going on in our minds, what's going on in our bodies, and what's going on in our souls. I'm your host, Darius Peace, and I'm excited to be your weekly guide on the journey to having better hair and a better life. When I was a little boy, I would go and sit on the toilet in our bathroom and look above the door because the toilet faced the door. And I would always read, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change. Give me the courage to change the things that I can and the wisdom to know the difference. And as a little boy, I didn't really understand that fully because I'm talking about being 8 or 9 years old and reading that. But it got stuck in my psyche. And the more mature I grow in life, it starts to make sense. Every year, that prayer of serenity makes sense to me. Now, my name is Darius Peace, and many times when people learn that my last name is Peace, they oftentimes associate it with a religion. Oh, praise be to God. And I think that that's a cool thing. But one thing many have to know about me, just so that there is no confusion whatsoever, is that I am not a man who practices organized religion at all. However, I do honor the organized religion and what it does for many of us, regardless of what your religion or your faith or your approach to living may be. Now, my personal approach, and I would often say my familial approach to faith, is in love. So I operate with love and I operate with peace. And so as I'm quoting this prayer of serenity, it has nothing to do with the Christian faith, although that's my foundation. That's what I grew up in. But I'm not in that anymore. And so I'm able to interpret it with a different type of open mind. And I'm able to be impacted by that prayer with a different type of open mind. So I'm saying that being very vulnerable because I'm a Southern gentleman and living in the South, to say that you don't practice organized religion, stones can easily be thrown at you. And there are a lot of people who may stop listening because they say, oh, if you don't go to church, I don't even know what to do with that. And for those who may decide to do that, that's fine. There's no hard feelings. I understand compatibility is very important. But me doing that is my way of being vulnerable. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about vulnerability. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change. That's a big thing because I had to look up, what is serenity anyway? What does serenity mean? And I've learned that serenity means calm. So when I'm able to break that down and make that make a little more sense to myself and to others who I may speak with, I can change that around to, God, grant me the calm. Help me calm down so that I can accept the things that I cannot change. That made so much more sense to me. Help me calm down so I can change what I cannot change, or so that I can accept what I cannot change. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change. Give me the courage to change what I can. Give me the courage to change what I can. Help me face what it is that I can change, because a lot of things that I may recognize that can be changed, I may not be ready for it. It's kind of like having a conversation with somebody that I know I can have the conversation. I know I can confront this, but I need the courage to do it. Help give me the strength to do that. And I also need the wisdom to know the difference. I got to know what battles to choose if there's a need to choose a battle. I need to know what things to address, what things to confront, and the way to do it. So that gave me a totally different interpretation of it. And, as I grow more mature, that may shift and become more real to me. So I'm okay with that. I was just talking to my wonderful producer here, Eric, and I was telling him that one of the things that I love so much about being human and living in this universe is that we've learned it to be ever expanding. And that means that if I perceive us as all individual universes, that means we all have the opportunity to be ever expansive, regardless of how we are acknowledging ourselves in this life and in this lifetime and in this life form. So I love that. So I'm a lot of my content comes from being a hairstylist in the salon. And as I mentioned in a previous episode of the My Hair Ain't Nappy podcast, I mentioned that whenever I am in the salon and conversing with people, a lot of content comes up, and I'm always wanting to make sure that this platform showcases the parallels that exist between our lives and our hair. And the thing I'm learning every single day about hair is that hair has everything to do with our lives. Every single thing. I mean, it does. It impacts our lives so much. And there's so much vulnerability that comes along with people coming to see me and many other hair care professionals in the hair salon. And it's a tricky thing, vulnerability, because so many of us struggle with it. And I'm not going to make it about us right now. I'm going to make it about me right now, exposing some of my vulnerability. I'm a big advocate of therapy. I love therapists. I love being able to go to a therapist and talk about what I need to talk about, because the life and the world that we live in involves a lot of trauma and it involves a lot of drama. And even for those of us who may not be aware of some of the dramas and the traumas of the world, there was one that every last one of us experienced, and that was the COVID-19 pandemic that swept across the globe and impacted us in ways that we could have never imagined in this lifetime. That was traumatic for many of us. We lost more lives in a very short amount of time than we could have imagined. It wasn't with a war that involved bombs or anything like this. This was a physical warfare that took place. And we're still today recovering from that. And many of us may not have even gotten to the step of recovery, but there are so many of us who have. And so the vulnerability, to acknowledge that and to get moving with the recovery with that, that's a thing. So I'm going to talk about me right now. I was in a therapy session, and one of the things that came up was, why is it such a challenge for me to be vulnerable? And I was like, oh my gosh, how do I even answer that? But I had to go inside myself and ask myself, peace, why is it a challenge for you to be vulnerable? And I had to acknowledge in that moment it was about control, because I want to be in control, or I think I need to be in control. I think I need to control the outcome of what people think or say about me, or influencing all of that, and not allowing people to see what it is that I may be ashamed of. And that right there, just it even right now in this moment, it challenges me in so many different ways. And I think about how people come and sit in my chair and they have to be vulnerable in order for us to keep on moving to a place of better and a place of growth and in a place of management of whatever it is that they're ashamed of. And in most cases with hair, I have people who come in with concerns of thinning. I have people who come in with concerns of breakage. I have people who come in with concerns of not having the hair that they used to have, textural changes, all of those things. Or even if it goes beyond the hair and people are ashamed of what they look like, what they sound like, their body. One thing that is so constant in this life as we know it is change and shift. And we're not always going to look the way we may have looked in our youth or at any point in our lives. We're not going to always sound the way we've always sounded. We're not going to always think the way we think or have thought, or we're not going to always have what we once had. And sometimes those things can result for many of us in shame, especially with hair. That's why when I say my hair ain't nappy, like that nappy word is a word that has triggered shame for so many people. And it ain't even just black people, y'all. Like people that have curly hair or hair that is showcasing a texture that is not straight have experienced shame from the term nappy. And it causes us to hide under wigs or hide under chemical processes or hide under extreme heat treatments or braids or practice or hats or turbans. It causes us to hide in the shame. And then when you come into the salon, the strength, that's the calm in the prayer of serenity. I've calmed down so that I've been granted the serenity to accept what I cannot change. If you're dealing with thinning, I may not be able to change that. If you're dealing with excessive shedding, I may not be able to change that. If you're someone who is undergoing chemotherapy to be a means to healing for cancer, I may not be able to change that my hair is coming out from chemotherapy. But give me the courage to change what I can. The courage in this situation is I went to the salon. I went to the dermatologist. I went to the doctor. I went to the therapist. I went to get some help because that's something that I can change. I can get the courage to do that. And it takes a lot of courage to be able to go and sit in someone's chair and expose whatever your problem is to them. One of the things that I'm learning about being a podcaster now and a producer of podcasting, and I know it seemed like I just shifted real fast, but I'm going to do that because this is a conversation that we're having, and I want to be as honest and transparent and as human as possible with, y'all who are listening, because we all deserve that, and it makes it easier for me to deliver the information that I want to share, and to me, it also makes it more valuable. And so, I was looking up what the definition of vulnerability is. Like, what is it? And so I looked online, and I can't remember the source, so please don't hold me accountable for what the source is. But vulnerability is a state of emotional exposure that comes with a degree of uncertainty. So when I say I like to be in control, that's the reason why it's sometimes very hard for me to be vulnerable, because of that degree of uncertainty. I don't know what the outcome is going to be, and sometimes that scares me. It involves a willingness to accept the emotional risk that comes from being open and willing to love and be loved. That willingness to be, that emotional risk that comes from being open and willing to accept and be accepted. That's a big deal for many of us. So there's always that possibility of being rejected. And that makes it hard for us to reveal the things that we're ashamed of. And we can't even get to a true place of healing and a true place of growth because we're afraid to be vulnerable, because we've allowed our shame. I have allowed my shame to take control. And I had to say I, because I'm owning my part or my contribution to the overall collective dysfunction. But we're here to get to a place of vulnerability and be able to access all of the beautiful power that comes along with that.
Visit HayaBeauty.com. That's HAYAH beauty.com, or give us a call 205-703-8022 for questions, for information, or to book your appointment.
Beauty can take you higher. is to inspire. I am, I was, and I always will be. Beauty higher. Beauty can take you higher. The mission is to inspire. And I always choose to start my day with higher, higher beauty.
You know, Darius, at this point, a lot of people have heard me say this because we produce about 7 podcasts here at Creed 63 now. You know my rule about jumping on the mic. I only jump on the mic if somebody touched an emotion inside of me. And as you were talking, I started to think about the journey for me in my faith and being vulnerable with my hair and on a grander scale. Specifically, what I want to say before I pass it back to you is I greatly appreciate what you do as an artist, as a creator, as a listener, because when people come to you, it's so much more than I need my hair done, cut, trimmed, styled in this or that way. You're very well aware that people often come to you, yes, for that, but the tertiary experiences of having someone they trust to talk to. I say all that to say, I think about the times, for me, this started about 6 years ago. I had to pinpoint. It's 2018 when I was forced to be vulnerable as it related to my hair. In certain places, my hair was starting to thin a little bit. And my hair was always very important to me. Like, I had to have my waves, had to be cut every 2 weeks, if not every week and a half. Lineup had to be sharp, had to wear my do-rag to bed, et cetera, et cetera. People in the black community will understand what I'm saying. But to start to experience 6 years ago for my barber, and I'm not going to call him a stylist, it's no shade, just he wasn't a stylist, he was a barber. To start to tell me, okay, we got to start to do some things different because right here, your hair is thinning right here, and he had the logic behind it. And to be able to speak to him about that and how that made me feel and this change that we're approaching it forced me to face my humanity, right? And my main point that I'm getting to is because I think I could be surprised and be wrong. What you're speaking to is the humanity that a lot of us face. Vulnerability requires you to grasp that humanity and acknowledge it. So I say all that to say it again in the moment forced me to acknowledge the past that I've had to face and acknowledging my humanity, but also encouraging others as they listen to lean into that, because at the end of the day, these are shared experiences that we all have that we just don't often talk about.
Because we live in a world that really teaches us to not be human. And it's like humanity is not celebrated. We are almost encouraged to be alien-esque. And we don't even know what that looks like or what that means. Most of us have never seen an alien. We have no idea what the fuck does an alien look like anyway. Excuse my bad English. I ain't gonna call it French because I don't speak French, but I can be very fluent in bad English as well as good English. But it's our humanity. We change as life. Everything about life as we know it. The earth is changing. The trees that we see change every season. That the animals that we encounter change. We change. Everything that's erected or elevated or ascending, in many cases, will start to descend. And that's okay because that's a part of the cycle of life. That's what's living. That's what's for us human. And so when you say you went into the barber shop and had to really expose your shame in your beauty via vulnerability with your barber, that took a lot. That took so much courage. And courage is human to me. And even the shame, all of these, different ways of being are all human to me. The shame, the beauty, the courage, that's all being human. But in order to get to a place of solution and transition, it's where that's the vulnerability that really was the ushering path to get to that place. And so the thing about me looking at you now and seeing you now and experiencing you now, you appear to be very good in your skin. Like, I'm good in this new skin. I'm good in this new head of hair. It's mine. And I know what I can change and what I cannot change. I have the wisdom now to know the difference between what I can, and I'm working with it. So our beauty shifts. Our beauty shifts often, and even beyond our hair. I deal with men and women both. That's what I love about Eric coming in right now and really sharing and being vulnerable about his experience as a male with hair, because typically we think men don't care. Oh, men don't care that much about their hair. It's us, because men's beauty isn't really defined by their hair like a woman's is. And in many cases, that's not true. Now, what I will say is a lot of men are able to be bald and that be defined as attractive and sexy in the masses, because it's marketed and promoted that way. But we have all the power in the world to make that same shift with women. We can't allow our beauty to be alienesque and robotic and inhumane. Because if the hair starts to thin or shed and you don't have the hair that you used to have back in the day, that doesn't make you less beautiful. But that vulnerability of exposing your newness, your new self, your more mature self, yourself without what you used to have. There's some strength that come along with that. And we got to stop all this hair shaming and this beauty shaming, making people think that they're not enough because life has changed. Who the hell told you weren't enough anyway? Who in the hell told you that you weren't beautiful enough? Who in the hell told you that your hair wasn't good enough? Who in the hell told you that your hair had to be a certain way in order for you to be beautiful? And even if somebody did, now we have to acknowledge, this is where the courage and the strength comes in. We have to acknowledge that can't nobody tell me that I'm not enough but me. So I can take full control in this situation and acknowledge to myself that I am I'm not enough. I'm more than enough. I am more than enough to be an example of beauty. I'm more than enough to be an example of strength. I'm more than enough to be an example of courage. I can be vulnerable with this because it's mine. I know what I can change. I know what I can't. And I have the courage to change what I can. And I'm so grateful for the wisdom to know the difference between the two so that I can keep calm, so I can calm down. That's what I've learned that serenity prayer is all about. So I've talked about the hair. I've talked about the hair shaming and all of that. I want to talk about vulnerability and how to even get to that place of vulnerability. When I started doing this podcast, I didn't think that it was going to require me doing the level of research that it requires. I thought I was just going to be able to get up here and talk. But then I was like, no. Like, if you're going to be talking to the people and if you're going to be sharing with the people, give them something fresh. Feed them fresh food that's going to impact their souls, impact every part of their body. We eat enough processed shit out here. It's time to give something real, something fresh, something that's going to fuel you. And hopefully that'll inspire many of us to start, eating or consuming what is fueling us and not something that's just filling us. Fuel, not feel. So, and this is something that I'm reading. So if it sounds like I'm reading right now, it's because I am. Let's see. I know I put it inside of my phone. Okay, here it is. I got it right here. And I love speaking like this because it makes me feel like you're right here in front of me. So I want to be able to do that. So don't think that I'm sounding unorganized and all over the place. No, I'm right here with you and you're right here with me. Give me that grace because I'm giving you that grace. So the first steps there are 4 recognized steps with vulnerability. And so one of the first steps is to locate and identify the areas that trigger shame or trigger a weakness or something like that for you. In this case, when the therapist asked me what was my fear or concern or resistance to vulnerability, and I said it was control. And I'm able to acknowledge that. I'm able to locate that inside of me, inside of my head, there is an issue with control because I'm concerned about not having a say so in the outcome. And there are a lot of things that I just cannot change. So that's one. The second step is to evaluate it. All right, well, now that I know that control is an issue for me, and this ain't just in one area, this is in every area of my life. Control. I remember I was hired to speak in Trinidad and Tobago, and it was such a great opportunity. It was so good. And the people who hired me, we went to the beach and we got in the ocean and we went swimming. And because this was a native place for us, they're island people. They were swimming like fish. I mean, when I say they could swim, and I could swim, but the way they were swimming, they were so vulnerable in the water and so fluid and so at ease. And I didn't experience that same type of relaxation in the water. And they were back floating with ease. And they said, well, Mr. Darius, why aren't you able to back float? And I was like, well, I'm trying to, but I kept sinking. And I kept sinking because I would not relinquish control of my body and just relax. And even to this day, I still struggle with being able to back float. So one day I'm going to get on this podcast and let y'all know that I have overcome that issue with control and not being able to back float. I was able to calm down and allow things in that case to just be, trust my body to do what it's going to do and allow me to stay afloat. Like that was something that I recognized. I hope that makes sense and ties into this because I don't ever want to seem like I'm all over the place. But that when I think about assessing the vulnerability, that was something that came up for me. And so it's that assessing the vulnerability is referring to us identifying and really determining how much of a risk I have in being vulnerable. Like, what am I really risking? So in the case of someone going into the hair salon and talking to their stylist about concerns that they have with their hair, whether it's thinning, whether it's shedding, whether it's chemical burn, or whether it's having gone to somebody else and experienced, something that's not something they could be proud of with their hair, whatever it may be, like assessing the risk. Like, what am I afraid of? Am I afraid that my stylist is going to dump me? Am I afraid that my stylist is going to talk loud and expose me to everybody in here? Like, what am I afraid of? And then with that, as hair care professionals and really as any service provider or leader of a session with anybody, we have to know that we have to be really careful about people and them coming to us with their vulnerability. We have to take care of that. We have to protect that. We have to let them know that they can be protected and they can trust us with their truth and with the risk that they're taking. I can be trusted with the risk because I've done it for so many years now. And that's why people keep coming back to me. They don't keep coming back to me just because I'm your natural hair expert or because I'm this bomb-ass stylist. No, they coming back to me because they know I can trust him with my vulnerability. And he has shown me that time and time again. And the beautiful thing is that those relationships are often very reciprocal because I'm able to trust people who sit with me as well. The third step is to monitor and remediate. So that means that after I've evaluated my vulnerabilities and within my environment or my session or whatever, I can be proactive with starting to manage this. Because now I've acknowledged what it was. Okay, so now I can start to manage. If I've said to my stylist, okay, my hair is thinning, or I've just experienced chemotherapy and all of my hair has come out. Now we can get to a path of what to do. Because typically in the case of hair thinning, I'm going to, with that vulnerability and the risk that was taken, I can tell you now, okay, well, the best thing to do is go and visit a dermatologist, because as a hairstylist or as a barber, I cannot diagnose what has happened. I can't look at you and say, well, it's probably hereditary, because no, I don't know your mama. I don't know your grandmama. I don't know your granddad. I don't know none of them people who could have influenced what your hair is doing. However, a dermatologist is more likely to be able to medically assess the situation to let you know what's going on beneath the surface of it all. Because we got to always remember, hair is growing from the inside out, and what's going on inside of our bodies is more likely to influence what's going on outside, especially with our hair and with our skin. And that's why I always say, well, what kind of grease I need to use? I ain't telling you what kind of grease to use. What we need to do is you may need to eliminate some of the grease that you put in your body that may be affecting your blood flow and your hair growth. So in that case, the dermatologist will be able to help guide us in that regard with the management thereof. And then the fourth step, that final step in it, is confirming what that vulnerability is and being able to confirm this is what it's going to take for me to get to a place of better. So in the cases of people who are operating in the shame of their hair texture, their hair condition, their hair length, their hair growth, whatever it is, one thing that you can always remember is that my hair, in whatever condition it's in, is my gift. It's mine. And there is nothing ugly about my gift. I have to start reminding myself every single day and every moment that I can that my hair is my gift, regardless of the texture. So that's why when I tell people that my hair ain't nappy, it's because I realize that it's my gift. And when I say your hair ain't nappy, regardless of what the texture is, it's because your gift. And acknowledging that, being vulnerable with ourselves and acknowledging that and affirming that for ourselves every day is what gets us to that place of better. We talked about it. I'll see y'all next time. Thank you for listening to the My Hair Ain't Nappy podcast. Reach out to us on social media. We're on TikTok and we're on Instagram at the My Hair Ain't Nappy podcast. We want to hear your stories. Until next time, love you and love your hair.